Hello everyone, welcome back to Juris Veda study sessions. I hope all of you are doing well. So, in today's class, we are going to discuss one of the most important topics in constitutional law, the preamble to the Constitution of India. Now, many of us have read the preamble at least once, but have you ever wondered why it is placed at the very beginning of the Constitution? Is it just an introduction or does it have a much deeper constitutional significance? Well, that's exactly what we will understand in today's session. We will begin with the meaning and origin of the preamble, and then we will move on to some important judgments that explain its legal position. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. What is a preamble? So, first of all, what exactly is a preamble? In simple words, a preamble is the introductory statement of a constitution. It appears before the main provisions and gives us an idea of what the constitution stands for and what it aims to achieve. So you can think of it like the introduction to a book. Before reading the chapters, you usually read the introduction to understand the purpose of the book. Similarly, before reading the Constitution, we first look at the preamble to understand its vision and philosophy. Now, the Indian preamble was drafted by the Constituent Assembly and it was based on something called the Objectives Resolution. The Objectives Resolution was basically a statement of goals and guiding principles. It outlined the vision that the makers of our constitution wanted India to follow, and later those ideas became the foundation of the preamble. Now, the preamble is often called the soul or identity card of the constitution because it reflects the basic values and ideals on which our constitution is built. It also tells us three very important things: where the constitution gets its authority from, what kind of state India is, and what objectives the Constitution seeks to achieve for its people. So, even though it's just one page, it gives us a clear picture of the philosophy behind the entire Constitution. Now that we have understood what the preamble is, let's see how it actually came into existence. The historical origin. Okay, so to understand the origin of the preamble, we first need to understand the objectives resolution. So, as we just discussed, the Objectives Resolution was a document that laid down the vision and fundamental principles on which the future Constitution of India would be based. You can think of it as the blueprint that guided the Constituent Assembly while drafting the Constitution. Now, let's look at the timeline. The first important date is 13th December 1946. On this day, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru moved the Objectives Resolution in the Constituent Assembly. It contained the basic ideals and principles that the Constitution was expected to reflect. I hope you understood this. Now, the next important date is 22nd January 1947. On this day, the Constituent Assembly formally adopted the Objectives Resolution. After its adoption, it became the foundation for drafting the preamble. Okay. Finally, then on 26th November 1949, the Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution of India, including the preamble. Finally, on 26th January 1950, the Constitution came into force and along with it, the preamble also became effective. So, if you look at this timeline carefully, you will notice that the preamble was not drafted independently. It evolved from the Objectives Resolution and eventually became the opening statement of our Constitution. Now that we have understood where the preamble came from, let's move on and understand what it actually says and why every single word in it's constitutionally important. Okay, so I hope you all have read this preamble at least once. Now we will read it again. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, ensuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation, In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt an act and give to ourselves this Constitution. So, this is the preamble as it stands today after the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. It begins with the words, "We the people of India." Now, this is one of the most important phrases in the entire Constitution. It simply means that the Constitution derives its authority from the people of India. In other words, it is the people who had given themselves this Constitution. Next, the preamble describes India as sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. We will understand each of these terms in just a moment. It then states the four objectives of the constitution, that is the justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Finally, it says that the constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 26th November 1949, and the members of the assembly adopted, enacted, and gave to themselves this constitution. Now let's understand these important words one by one. Breaking down the preamble. So first we will break down these words, that is the sovereign, socialist, and secular. Okay, first sovereign. A sovereign country is completely independent. It can make its own decisions both within the country and its relation with other nations. No foreign country has the authority to control India's affairs. Now, socialist. This word was added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment in 1976. Now, don't confuse India's socialism with the Soviet model. India follows democratic socialism, which means there is a balance between the public sector and the private sector. The main aim is to reduce economic inequality and promote social welfare. Okay? So, the third word is secular. This was also added by the 42nd Amendment. A secular state has no official religion. It treats all religion equally and allows every person the freedom to practice and profess the religion of their choice. This idea is often expressed through the phrase Sarva Dharma Sambhava, meaning equal respect for all religions. So these three words together describe the nature of the Indian state. Now let's move to the next two terms, that is democratic and republic. India is a democratic country because the government derives its authority from the people. Citizens elect their representatives through universal adult suffrage, which means every eligible adult citizen has the right to vote. Democracy is not just about elections, it also reflects the idea that every citizen should have an equal opportunity to participate in the governance of the country. Okay? So, government derives its authority from the will of the people expressed through universal adult suffrage, covers both political democracy and social democracy. So, political democracy means elections, and social democracy means equality in the society. Next is republic. A republic means that the head of the state is elected and not a hereditary ruler, unlike a monarchy. Okay? Now, India, the president is the head of the state and the office is filled through an election as provided under the constitution. This is different from a monarchy where the position is inherited. Now, here's a small exam point. Only three words have ever been added to the preamble through a constitutional amendment, that is, socialist, secular, and integrity, all by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Okay, that's a small one, but it's asked quite often in exams. Now, let's understand the four objectives mentioned in the preamble. The first is justice. The Constitution aims to secure social, economic, and political justice for all citizens. These ideals are reflected through different provisions of the Constitution, especially the fundamental rights and the DPSP, or Directive Principles of State Policy. Okay. The second is liberty. The preamble guarantees liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. Simply put, every individual has the freedom to think independently, express opinions, and follow the religion of their choice, subject to the reasonable restrictions provided by the law. And this thought of expression, thought, belief, faith, and worship is inspired by the French Revolution. Now, the third objective is equality. The Constitution promises equality of status and equality of opportunity. This principle forms the basis of Article 14 to 18, Article 14 to 18, which together make up the right to equality. Then comes fraternity. Fraternity means a feeling of brotherhood among all citizens. It encourages unity, mutual respect, and ensures the dignity of every individual while preserving the unity and integrity of the nation. So, these four objectives together reflect the values that our constitution seeks to achieve. Okay, now here's a question that reached the Supreme Court. Is the preamble actually a part of the constitution? Initially, in the Berubari Union case, so we have two major cases under this question, that whether the preamble is part of the constitution or not. That is Berubari Union case 1960 and Keshavanda Bharati case 1973. These two cases are really important. So please note it down. So initially in the Berubari Union case 1960, the Supreme Court held that the preamble was not a part of the constitution. The court observed that although it could help understand the intention of the constitution's framers, it was not enforceable by itself. However, this position changed in the landmark case of Keshavanda Bharati versus State of Kerala 1973. 13 judge bench of the Supreme Court overruled the view taken in Berubari and held that preamble is indeed a part of the constitution. Okay. Now, at the same time, the court also clarified that a person cannot directly approach a court to enforce a right based only on the preamble. Instead, it serves as an important guide in interpreting the provisions of the Constitution whenever there is any ambiguity. So, today, the settled legal position is that the preamble forms part of the Constitution, but it is not an independent source of enforceable rights. I hope you understood that concept. Now, the next question is, can the preamble be amended by the Parliament? The answer is yes, but there is an important limitation. In Keshavanda Bharati, the Supreme Court held that the Parliament has the power to amend the preamble under Article 368. However, while exercising this power, Parliament cannot destroy or alter the basic structure of the Constitution. These words are very important. That is the basic structure of the Constitution. Till date, the preamble has been amended only once. That is through the 42nd Amendment Act 1976, as we discussed before. So, through 42nd Amendment Act 1976, they inserted the words like socialist and secular to describe the nature of the Indian state. It also added the word integrity by changing the expression unity of the nation to unity and integrity of the nation. Apart from these three additions, no other word in the preamble has ever been amended, removed, or added. Sorry. Now, so, before we conclude, let's quickly revise why the preamble is important. First, it tells us that the Constitution derives its authority from we, the people of India. Okay? Second, it describes the nature of the Indian state as sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Then, third, it lays down the constitutional objectives of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. It also records the date on which the constitution was adopted, that is 26th November 1949. Most importantly, whenever a constitutional provision is unclear or capable of more than one interpretation, the courts may refer to the preamble to understand the spirit and purpose of the constitution. Okay. And finally, the ideals reflected in the preamble form part of the basic philosophy of our constitution, which cannot be destroyed even through a constitutional amendment. So the second and third point, um, so basically you should understand the difference. Okay, so the second point is talks about the nature of the Indian state, and third point declares the objectives. Okay, all right. So we will also see the case laws at a glance. Let's quickly revise the important developments we have discussed through a timeline. The first landmark case is Berubari Union case of 1960, in which in which the Supreme Court held that the preamble is not a part of the Constitution. According to the court, it could help understand the intention of the Constitution's frameworks, but it could not be treated as a part of the Constitution itself. Okay? Then came the landmark judgment in Keshwanda Bharati versus State of Kerala 1973. This completely changed the legal position. A 13 bench judge, a 13 judge bench held that the preamble is indeed a part of the constitution. At the same time, the court clarified that uh, it cannot be enforced directly from the preamble alone. I'm sorry, the rights cannot be enforced directly from the preamble alone. So the next important element was the 42nd Amendment Act 1976. This amendment added three words to the preamble, that is socialist, secular and integrity. So if you remember these three milestones, you will have a clear picture of how the legal position of the preamble evolved over time. Okay? Now, these are few small memory tricks that might help you during exams. To remember the five words that describe the nature of the Indian state, think of the sequence like SSSDR, that is Sovereign, Socialist, Secular, Democratic Republic. Similarly, hmm, okay, so here is something else as well. Sunny summer, slow down rain. That is Sovereign, Socialist, Secular, Democratic Republic. Then for the objectives, similarly for constitutional objectives, remember the acronym JLEF. That is Justice, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity. JLEF. In the okay, remember you should also write it in the exact order they appear in the preamble. So these quick memory tips will help you during your exams. So these are simple memory aids. They don't replace your understanding, but they will definitely help in revision. Now, before we finish, let's revise everything in just a minute. Okay? The preamble is based on the Objectives Resolution, which was moved by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on 13th December 1946. The Constitution, along with the preamble, was adopted on 26th November 1949 and it came into force on 26th January 1950. Okay, so remember this difference? It was adopted on 26 November 1949 and it came into force on 26 January 1950. Now, the five words describing the Indian state, there are sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and the four objectives that are justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Remember the two important cases? Berubari Union in 1960, the preamble was held not to be a part of the constitution, and Keshanda Bharati, the Berubari view was overruled, and the Supreme Court held that the preamble is a part of the constitution. And finally, Parliament can amend the preamble under Article 368 but only without damaging the basic structure of the Constitution. So far, it has been amended only once through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment. So, if you remember these points, you will have a very strong foundation for understanding the preamble. Now, now let's quickly test our understanding with two simple questions. First question, which case held the preamble is a part of the Constitution of India? Yeah, it's Keshanda Bharati versus State of Kerala. Now, the second question is the words socialist and secular were added to the preamble by which constitutional amendment? That is the 42nd constitutional amendment. You're absolutely right. If you got both the questions correct, that's great. If not, don't worry. Just revise the timeline once, and you will be able to remember it easily. So, with that, we have completed our discussion on the preamble to the Constitution of India. I hope this session helped you understand not just the meaning of the preamble but also its origin, its significance, the important constitutional terms, and the landmark judgments associated with it. So, with that, we have completed our discussion on the preamble of the Constitution of India. I hope this session helped you understand not just the meaning of the preamble but also its origin, its significance, the important constitutional terms, and the landmark judgments associated with it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Juris Veda session. Thank you. Take care.